Once upon a time, there were two dogs, whose name we did not know, but for the sake of this story, we will call them Adam and Steve, because every good story deserves a little biblical confusion. We did not know much about Adam and Steve. They could have been best friends, or perhaps Adam was Steve's sugar daddy. But from my observations, it was clear that Adam was the elder gentleman. He was bigger, slower, and much calmer. Steve, on the other hand, was a smaller dog with far more energy. His signature welcome move was to run towards you at full speed and jump at the very last second, delivering a flying kick straight to your thigh, an enthusiastic greeting that occasionally landed a little higher than expected. Adam and Steve live in a farmhouse on a hill. For many years they lived happily together. They were the guardians of this country road, protecting us from monsters like white vehicles, the postman's van, the farmer's truck, and anything unfamiliar. Every day they spent their time patrolling up and down the country road. For many years, nothing much changed. Everything was peaceful, just as it had always been. Until one day, a stranger arrived and moved into the little house halfway down the road. His name was Chuck. Adam and Steve were very wary of this outsider. For 6 months, they ran past the little house, avoiding any contact with Chuck. And for 6 months, Chuck tried every way he could to make friends with them. He offered a friendly smile, a tasty treat, a whistle, and even delicious pieces of chicken. But nothing worked. Until one day, Adam and Steve finally decided that Chuck meant no harm. They accepted his offering of tasty treats and became friends. From then on, every time Chuck returned from civilization, or when he worked in the garden or cooked in the kitchen, Adam and Steve would run down from the farmhouse to keep him company. From that day forward, they considered Chuck one of the family. Once again, everything was peaceful. Then one day, strange noises started coming from somewhere in the forest. Adam and Steve knew about the path leading to the dark forest, but they had never had a reason to go down there before. It was shady and scary. But their curiosity got the better of them. So they bravely walked down the path, through the dark forest of lavender, pine trees and bramble. Eventually, they discovered another farmhouse, bigger than theirs. Inside this farmhouse was a garden, and in that garden were strange, yellow, fluffy creatures with orange beaks, making the most unusual sound. Quack, quack, quack. Adam and Steve had never seen anything like them before. They ran back to the farmhouse and began planning how to capture one of these creatures. For days they returned to the big farmhouse, carefully observing and making sure their plan would work. One day, Chuck was working in the garden when he saw Steve walk past. Head held high like the proud little dog he was. In his mouth was one of those yellow, fluffy creatures. Steve had brought it to Chuck as a gift of friendship. Unfortunately, it was not quite the kind of gift Chuck had been hoping for. Chuck had been aiming for something closer to a tennis ball. Steve dropped it at Chuck's feet and ran back towards the forest. Soon after he returned with another, and another, and another. In total, he brought 5. Unfortunately, 3 of them were no longer moving, and the other 2 were not looking very well. Chuck, a well-traveled man, knew exactly what they were: ducklings. He gently placed the 2 injured ducklings into a bucket, gave them some water, and lay a towel inside for them to rest on. He prayed they would survive the night. Sadly, they did not. Chuck felt it was his responsibility to return the ducklings to their owner. He met the owner of the farmhouse and suggested that she assign a guardian to protect her precious ducklings. A week later, the farmhouse owner found a young female dog to protect them. Her name we did not know, but for the sake of this story, we will call her Eve. Why a female dog? Perhaps it was clever strategy, or perhaps pure whimsy. Either way, it worked. Adam and Steve returned to the big farmhouse, hoping to see more ducklings. But when they arrive, they discover Eve, and they were immediately mesmerized by her beauty. She had big brown eyes, a shiny coat, and a fit toned body. Both Adam and Steve fell in love with her instantly. The owner of the farmhouse plan, intentional or accidental, had worked perfectly. Adam and Steve quickly lost interest in the ducklings and focused completely on Eve. Over a short period of time, Adam, Steve, and Eve became good friends, and feelings quickly began to grow between them. However, there was a problem. Eve was in love with Steve, and Adam was in love with Eve. Adam, being the older dog, was the one who got to be with Eve. Age, experience, and a certain stubborn refusal to move aside had their advantages. Steve could only watch while Adam spent time with her, and for Eve, it was the only way she could continue seeing Steve. Humans have a name for arrangement like this. They call it a love triangle. And much like most love triangles, it was confusing, unfair, and almost guaranteed to end badly for at least two of the participants. Soon frictions grew between Adam and Steve. They began arguing more and more, sometimes even fighting. The friendship that had lasted for years slowly began to crumble. The owner of the big farmhouse soon noticed that Eve often disappeared into the forest with Adam and Steve instead of protecting the ducklings. So she placed restriction on her, forbidding Eve to go anywhere without her. Adam and Steve could no longer see Eve without risk. They returned to the little house halfway down the road to spend time with Chuck again. But their friendship was never quite the same. They often argued, and sometimes patrolled the countryside alone. As for Eve, no one ever saw her again. But sometimes, from the direction of the big farmhouse, we could hear her calling, hoping that one day a prince might come to rescue her, preferably one without a best friend following close behind, so she could finally leave the big farmhouse and live happily ever after.